Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today, we've got a series of 3 pictures to talk about in our Pictures Worth a Thousand Words. These pictures are all from the same date. Kind of difficult without the deck logs for the 1980s to tell what that date is. One of the pictures is stamped 10 October 1986. One of them is stamped 30 December 1986. So they're relatively close together, but they don't necessarily agree. While we don't have the deck logs for the 1980s, we do have the command history from 1986. So the NavSource website where we got the highest resolution of these pictures say that the event either took place on October 10th, 1986 or December 30th, 1986. And it seems unlikely that something this complicated, cross-wiring all the guns together and bypassing the time delays, was done more than once. Luckily, we do have the ship's 1986 command history, and right at the end of a West Pack that the ship does with a couple other battle groups, we have this paragraph. The day before New Jersey pulled into Seattle, technically that's October 12th, so this tends to lead credence to the October 10th or 11th date. Another historic first was recorded when the battleship conducted a 21-gun dual broadside, all 9 16-inch guns and all 12 5-inch guns fired simultaneously. A total weight of 73,442 pounds of ammunition was expended in the demonstration, and it was witnessed by some 8,000 sailors aboard Constellation and Ranger. Those are 2 supercarriers. So it explains why there's so much photography of this event and why we've got aerial pictures of it. I'm fairly certain that these 3 pictures are all of the same day, because what they're depicting is something very complicated, and I don't think that they would have done it once and then redone it later. So this is a very famous picture of the ship, and it's pretty unique for me. It shows Battleship New Jersey firing all of her guns, all 9 of her main battery guns and all 12 of her 5-inch guns, so the 21-gun salute, and she is firing them across either broadside simultaneously. So this is not normal, and that's a question that I often get asked. People send me this picture and or one of these pictures, and they say that, oh, could they do that, or did they do that normally? And the simple answer is no, that is not at all common for several reasons. We'll talk about that in a minute. So first off, this series of pictures is special and unique because by 1986, both Iowa and Missouri have been reactivated, and Wisconsin is going through the reactivation process. New Jersey, being the first one brought back in 1982, has a tremendous amount of photography and PR type stuff relating to her from that time period in the early 80s. But by 1984, when Iowa is active again, and then especially in 1986 when Missouri is back on active service, the number of pictures of New Jersey drops dramatically. All of the PR events tend to happen on those ships. You know, Missouri is the surrender ship, arguably the most historic of the Iowa-class battleships. I would say that's debatable, but very much foremost in the public consciousness. She's in a lot of stuff, everything from Cher's music video to regular PR photographs. And of course, Iowa is doing the cool stuff. She's the only one at this time that's active on the East Coast, and she is doing a lot of really groundbreaking gunnery tests that are making guns relevant in the age of missiles. And so there's she's also testing drones for the first time. So there's a lot of pictures of her doing this pioneering stuff, and the pictures of New Jersey just drop off. I've worked with a number of authors who have been writing their books on New Jersey or Iowa-class battleships, and around 1984, you just stop seeing them. Right off the bat, this photo series is remarkable simply because they chose to do it on New Jersey. Let's actually get into what we can see in some of these pictures. Our first picture, you can really see turret 1 is facing to the starboard side. that looks like the left-hand side, but we're facing aft in the picture. Turret 2 is facing to the port side, and turret 3 is also facing to the starboard side, and the 5-inch guns are facing due off the sides, although you can't see that. So full 21 gun salute. The first remarkable thing is this picture is taken from the bow of the ship, which means that there is a photographer on the bow of the ship. A very common question you guys ask is, oh, you couldn't be on the deck of the ship when the guns fire. In the documentary Under Siege, Tommy Lee Jones gets thrown across the deck when Alabama, playing Missouri's 16-inch gun, fires at the submarine that Gary Busey was in command of. That's not true. You could be on deck when the guns are fired. You would be wearing hearing protection. We have a number of pictures of photographers standing on deck taking pictures, and you can sort of see that in the next picture I'll show you. So, other things, you can clearly tell that this is the 1980s time period, so the date saying that this is 1986 is likely relatively correct. In the next picture, we'll look and see if we can narrow that down some more. In picture number 2, we can see a helicopter pilot. I believe this is a Cayman Sea Sprite based on the shape of the windows and whatnot. The helicopter pilot sits in the right-hand side, not the left-hand side. So this is the co-pilot shooting through the pilot side window at the battleship. So this is where picture 3 is taken from. There are photographers on the helicopter. So that's also part of how you can tell that this is a PR event, that they're specifically staging photographers on the bow of the ship and staging a helicopter above the ship to do this. And if you look at the bow of the ship, you see that everything is gray or tan where the wood is, and there is a little black cluster under the discone cage antenna. And that is not just 2 strips of black for the anchor chain. It's like a cluster, people. Those are multiple photographers taking the picture that we saw back in picture 1. A really important thing to note in this picture is that you can see all the fireballs happening at the same time. The guns of an Iowa-class battleship are set to have a microsecond of a delay. Here's some video of the guns firing. Notice the trigger is pulled, and then you see the center barrel fire, right barrel fire, left barrel fire, all in sequence, split second between them, but it's not all one gigantic fireball. The reason for that is if you have 2 shells leaving the gun barrels right next to each other, their explosions are coming out with such force that they will push each other off course. And if they just push each other an inch as they're leaving the barrel, well, firing at a target 23 miles away, your shells are now going to be miles off target. That's what creates dispersion. And you really want a much tighter grouping. So there is a wired-in time delay to the guns to prevent that sort of dispersion. However, it very clearly appears that it's not being done here. Also, both the 16-inch and the 5-inch guns are being fired simultaneously. They are normally controlled by 2 separate computers and 2 separate triggers. In fact, it would be pretty rare that both the port and starboard side batteries would be cross-connected into the same triggers. That's relatively easy to do, but still not common. And all of the guns are wired to fire together, bypassing any sort of delays that they would have. So what this tells me is that they have gone beyond what the guns are normally capable of being cross-connected to do and wired everything into a single trigger. And I have heard a story from a sailor saying that some of the chief gunner's mates or first-class gunner's mates had to wire everything together to fire and bypass the time delay, and the 5-inch and the 16s together so that the admiral who's doing this PR stunt could pull the trigger from up on deck, which again, not common. Typically, the guns are fired from down in plot, and there are a bunch of other places you can fire from, but they're inside armored parts of the ship, not where you can see the guns being fired. So, It seems like they have done something very similar to if you pay to fire one of New Jersey's guns, we have wired one of the triggers from the actual gun mount out via a cord to a trigger so that you can stand outside the gun and fire it as opposed to being inside and kicking the manual foot pedal but being in an armored box and not seeing what you did. Something that you can see in this view, the main battery director, spot 1, that's on top of the forward fire control tower, is pointed 90 degrees to starboard along with turrets 1 and 3. A question that I always get asked is, can you split the fire of the guns? And the simple answer is yes. You have 2 main battery fire control directors, spot 1 and spot 2, the one on the forward tower, the one on the after tower. You've got a tertiary fire control director in the upper level of the conning tower. And then each turret has its own rangefinder and computer. You have 2 Mark 8 range keepers, one in forward plot and one in aft plot, that can aim the guns. And you've got the forward Mark 1 Ables for the 5-inch guns, 4 of those, that can also be cross-connected to the 16-inch guns if you need to. So the simple answer is yes, you can fire all of your guns at different targets. You could, in theory, be firing cross-deck like we're seeing in this picture. In practice, that is far less common. Your captain has done something very, very wrong if he ends up with enemy ships on both sides of him. And splitting your fire is never an ideal solution. That's part of why the ship has a primary and a secondary battery, so that you can use your primary battery to focus down one target while driving off another target with your secondary battery. And I am not familiar of any instances of American battleships splitting their fire like this in combat. New Jersey and Iowa do not off Troop Lagoon when they're firing at the Japanese warships there. Washington and South Dakota don't, even though they're in a target-rich environment. They focus down the biggest target first, Kirishima. And at Saragawa Strait, the American battle line focuses on a single Japanese battleship first and then works their way down the line. So while, yes, you do have enough rangefinders, enough computers, enough triggers that you can cross-connect to be able to fire part of your battery in one direction, part of your battery in the other direction, extremely, extremely unlikely. People always say that firing the guns one side or the other is going to slide the ship sideways in the water, which just isn't the case. We've talked about that ad nauseum. But this picture gives you a really good look at how these fireballs, the guns appear to be elevated to about 5 degrees. They're not really high up. So they're right above the water. And you can see how the water under these fireballs rippling out is this frothy white from being displaced by the gas bubble that's being bursted out of the ends of the barrels in this explosion. And you can see how that is pushing a wake up the side of the ship. And if you look at the port side of the ship, the right-hand side of the picture, you can see that wake has been pushed a little bit forward of turret 1. If you're looking at the left side of the ship, where turret 1 has been fired, that wake has been pushed almost all the way up to the bow. So even though these guns are firing at the same time, you can see that because turret 1's a little bit further forward than turret 2, you've got some dissimilar wakes. Speaking of the wake, if you look back at the fantail, the course of the ship is perfectly straight. In theory, with 2 turrets firing one way, 1 turret firing the other, we should see the ship sliding to the port side, to the right side of the picture, and we don't. It's a pretty straight line there. So, did you notice anything else in these pictures that I didn't? Let us know in the comment section down below. Had you seen these pictures before and wondered what the heck was going on in them? Let us know. And, as always, if you have any other pictures you would like to see us cover in A Picture's Worth 1,000 Words, there's a link in the description below to my Facebook page. Really hard to share photos on YouTube, so come over to my Facebook page and send me something on there. And then I can review it and save it and do videos like this in the future. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating to support the museum. It allows us to keep doing projects like this and analyzing photographs that we've all seen a bunch, but have never really had a chance to look at or research. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.